Hi, everybody. It's James Clary, the restaurant guru, bringing you another segment in the Restaurant Secrets to Success series. Are you ready? Me too. Let's do it. Hey, everybody. It's James Clary, the restaurant guru. Back from a brief hiatus. I have been in Chicago. Was in Chicago last week for the National Restaurant Association, otherwise known as the other NRA. And let me tell you, I am so fired up. I could do 3 or 4 shows on just what I learned at the NRA. One of the highlights was getting to hear Jon Taffer, who you may know. He has the show Bar Rescue. He and Robert Irvine, Chef Robert Irvine of Restaurant Impossible, talked for about an hour at an event. There's probably 600-700 people there. It was really cool. Just these guys, you know, I respect them both. Irvine a lot more than Taffer. I don't really think Taffer's management style is proper. I don't think shouting down people is the way to get results. But, you know, that's his gig, man. He's got the television program. He's making the big bucks, whatever. But he still had, you know, some insights. But what I want to talk to you about today, one of the coolest things that I did at the NRA was meet a bunch of people that I've gotten to know online, people in my business, podcasters, restaurant people, consultants, restaurant owners. Had the opportunity to go out and spend some time together. And one guy, Eric Cacciatore, who has the podcast Restaurant Unstoppable. I was actually on his show. He interviewed me, and I'll put that link to that interview if you care to listen to it in the show notes. But Eric was recounting an experience he had at Nick's Pizza. It's about an hour outside of Chicago. I can't remember the name of the town, but the owner's a guy named Nick Sorello, and Nick is a fascinating guy, and I'm hoping to have him on the program. I've actually been speaking to him via email. Fascinating guy who has an incredibly successful pizza business, but it wasn't always that successful. After 2008, he darn near went under. He had 2 places. He was going to open a third. The bank kind of screwed him. They just, you know, money that they'd agreed to loan him, then they backed out on it. But his sales plummeted because of the recession. And so he asked himself a lot of hard questions. So you got to realize this is only 8 years ago, and he hired a consultant named Rudy Mick. So I have been digging into both of these guys, Nick Sorello and Rudy Mick. And the title of this podcast is, if you want to change your restaurant, you have to change the culture. And that's what this deal is about. And, you know, I have 43 years in the business. I feel like I have a pretty good handle on all aspects of the restaurant business, from the office, the dining room, the bar, the kitchen, and the human resources part, because that's the part I honestly think that I have the least experience in, but I'm the most fascinated with because I love to learn. And I've often said that 80% of the time spent training managers is spent training them in operations, and only between 10 and 20% is on the people side, the human resources side. But managers spend 80% of their time dealing with people. So why the heck don't we devote 80% of our time training managers how to deal with people? So anyway, Nick Sorello and his consultant, Rudy Mick, decided to change the culture. Now, this is not an easy process, and I'm not going to go into how you do it here, but it's actually something that I'm adding to my toolkit as a consultant in helping other businesses, is that the culture has to be changed for each staff member. And I think the first thing you have to do is you have to outline, whether you're a restaurant, any business, what are your core values and your purposes. So values and purposes could be 3 points, 10 points, whatever it is. You define those, and that's not an easy task, you know. And most people have never sat down and thought, well, wow, what is my business all about? Well, I think you need to do that. It's really important. Those need to be written down, and then you need to meet with each staff member, reviewing these values and purposes. And then from that point, it's all about open communication. And Nick Cirillo and some of these other guys are big proponents of open book management, which I am too. I never did it to the extent they did, but once a month I had a state of the restaurant meeting with all my staff, and I told them where we were financially. You know, a lot of people are under the mistaken assumption, particularly in this day and age when you hear people screaming for $15 an hour minimum wage for doing whatever, but they're under the mistaken impression that business owners are just getting rich, and it's so far from the truth. Most small business owners in America struggle to pay their bills. That's just the reality. Now they're paying themselves a salary, but it's a struggle, and they've got this risk. You know, they've borrowed $1 million, whatever it is, to start their business. They have an obligation to pay that back. So Nick Cirillo, these guys are all about open book management, sharing with the staff, you know, what things cost. And now someone drops a plate that's $8 and they say, I dropped a plate. Now they understand the importance of saving every penny. And then he also has a program by which employees can actually give themselves a raise. And I love this idea. And it's through training. He has several different levels of staff expertise. And once you get to a certain level, you're making this much. Well, if you want to get a raise, if you want to make more money, then you have to complete X, Y, and Z. And they could be reading books, it could be on-hands training, whatever it is. Then when they complete that, they sit down with a manager, they review the materials that they've learned, they are tested on it, and then they're promoted and they get a raise. And I think that's awesome. I mean, it provides incentive. We've gotten away from that in our society. That is providing incentives to employees for work, for good work. That's incredibly important. You know, this old idea that, you know, if I just stay at a job long enough, I'll get a raise for being there. That, in my mind, that's always been silly. I'd rather pay a guy that's been there a week who's running circles around the old guy. I'll pay the new guy more. So if you're in business, whether you're in a restaurant or any other type of business, look at the culture you have. Define your values and your purposes. Write them out, and then make sure that your staff is on board with those values and those purposes. And from there, I think you can do just about anything. I'm James Clary, the Restaurant Guru. We will see you next week. Thanks for listening. Visit me at therestaurantguru.net for more information on how you can become successful in the most difficult business in the world, the restaurant business.